Okay, welcome everyone. Actually, I'm celebrating a new camera tonight, so to test it out, I did a 7-minute shir. It's on Torah Anytime on YouTube, called the Super Bowl Phenomena, so you could take a look at that. And we're dedicated by Shalom Fogel, Nishmas Yaakov Zeb ben Yehuda Aryeh, Rivka bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzib Yamir bas Gad, Yosef ben Sim ben Yaakov Zev, Moshe Aryeh ben Miriam, should have a refuah shalema, and for a great shidduch for Chayat Tzibya bas Shoshana Gittel, a great shidduch for Batya bas Sarah, by Baruchi and Leil Nishmas Yaakov Chaim and Abba Esther bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKayin, refuah shalema for Liba bas Anya, refuah shalema for Yosef Shmuel ben Miriam, and for healthy mommy, healthy baby for Ariel and Lior bas Elza Rivka. And we learn
Mordechai Tzvi ben Roshchana,
and we learn Lila Nishmas for Yitzchakaya ben David Yaakov. We learn also for Shalema for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fradel, Nechama Sarah bas Miriam, David Menachos Levi ben Rachel, Yochai ben Ruchama. Okay, so we are holding on the bottom of Daf Chavtes Amid Beis, Igra Chamua de Rebbe Abba. Igra, the father-in-law of Rebbe Abba, Havali Yeseris B'Sifrei. He had extra letters in his Sefer Torah. Also, the coming to Rebbe Abba came before Rebbe Abba. Amalei la Amran ela b'chaseris. The only problem, if there is, let's say, 4 in every column that you have to hide the Sefer Torah, that's only missing letters. But extra letters, which you should just erase, is not a problem. Now, he said 2 things Rav said, and there was a Bryson not like him. Idach, another statement, the Amar Rav, HaKosev Sefer Torah, one writing a Sefer Torah, Ubal Ligmar, and he comes to finish it. Gaimer va'afilu be'emtza daf. He could finish the Sefer Torah even in the middle of the last column. Says, however, this is not so. Meisvei HaKosev Sefer Torah, Baloi Ligmar, when he wants to finish, Lo Yigmar be'emtza daf kederach shegaimer b'chumashim. A person should not finish in the middle of the column like in separate chumashim, elamekatzer v'haylach, but rather he should narrow out the lines if he has to, v'haylach at sefer daf, and finish at the bottom of the column. He has to finish the Sefer Torah, Leinei Kol Yisrael has to be at the bottom of the column. Says the Gemara, you're right. Ki kama Rav b'chumashim. Rav was talking about separate chumashim. Says the Gemara, was Sefer Torah Kama, but Rav said the Sefer Torah. He didn't say separate Chumashim. In those days, the Chumashim were also scrolls. Says the Gemara, when he said Sefer Torah, he meant B'Chumashim shall Sefer Torah, separate Chumashim of the Sefer Torah. Ini, is it so that Rav holds that you have to finish at the end of the column? V'Amar Rebbe Yeshua ba'Abba Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav La'enei Kol Yisrael is be'emtza hadaf. La'enei Kol Yisrael could be in the middle of the column. Says the Gemara, no. What it means is, Hahi be'emtza shita itma, that you don't have to finish La'enei Kol Yisrael at the end of the bottom line. It could be in the middle of the bottom line. Rabbanan Imrei af be'emtza shita. Rabbanan says that you could even do it in the middle of the line. The Rabbanim hold that he meant that it could be even in the middle of the line, and it could be taka also in middle of the column, not like the brisa that we learned. However, Rav Ashi Amar be'emtza shita dafka, only in the middle of the bottom line, but it has to be on the bottom of the column. The hilchas be'emtza shita dafka, it could be in the middle of the bottom line, but not in the middle of the page. You have to do it, it has to finish the column. Now, Amar Rav Yeshua Abba, Amar Rav Gidol, Amar Rav. Now this is an interesting thing. At the end of the Torah, it says Vayomois Moshe. Now that poses a problem. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote the Torah, and it's a Torah's emes. So how could he write Vayomois Moshe? How could he write that Moshe died? I mean, so Amar Rabbi Shua Abba, Amar Rav Gidol, Amar Rav. Shmoina Psukim Sheb'Torah. The last 8 psukim in the Torah, since they have unusual properties, Yachid Kairei Aysan Bebeis HaKnesses. You don't split it up into 2 aliyahs. It should all be 1 aliyah. Says the Gemara, come on, the like Reb Shimon. The Tanya Vayama Sham Moshe Eved Hashem. Moshe, the servant of Hashem, died. Efshe Moshe Chai. Could it be possible that Moshe was alive because of Vayama Sham Moshe? And he wrote that Moshe died? I mean, Ela Adkan Kosev Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote until Vayamas Moshe. Mikan ve'elach, from then onward, Kosev Yeshua ben Nun. It was written by Rabbi Yeshua ben Nun. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, ve'imrula Reb Nechemia. Amalei Reb Shimon. So Reb Shimon said, that can't be. After Sefer Torah Chaser Ois Achas, could it be possible that until Yeshua ben Nun, the Sefer Torah was missing a letter, missing 8 psukim? V'ksiv l'koyach Sefer Torah Azeh. Take this Sefer v'samtem oisam, and you should put it in the Aron. So it can't be that the Sefer Torah until Yeshua ben Nun was deficient. Ela ad kan HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer. Until then, Hashem said it. Moshe repeated it and wrote it. This way, Hashem could correct him if there was something wrong. Mikan ve'elach, the last 8 psukim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Omer, Moshe kaisev b'dema, and Moshe wrote it with tears. Like it says, the custom was when writing it, you repeated what was said. And Baruch said, from Yirmiyah, I heard these words, and I wrote it on the Sefer B'Yai. Now, Yirmiyah said words of lamentation, and because of his anguish, he didn't repeat it and say it over. Normally you say it over. Now, the question is, what does it mean that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it b'dema? So some say it means that those 8 words, since it didn't happen yet, he wrote with tears instead of ink. But that's a problem, because again, if it's tears, then it's a deficient Sefer Torah. So there's a famous vart of the Vilna Gaon. And the Vilna Gaon says b'dema means that the words were scrambled differently. So that's why there's no nekudas, no grammar, no commas, no periods. So you could, like for example, the word Bereshis could also be written Barashis. He created in 6 days. You could configure words. Remember when the Malachim said, let us keep the Torah. So Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, answer them. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, do you have parents that you could fulfill Kabed Asavicha Ve'Simmecha? So that's a good kasha. What are Malachim going to do with the Torah? The answer is that the Malachim had the Torah, but it didn't say what we said. It was configured differently. And when configured in a different way, in other words, the letters were combined differently, and it's Koa Torah Kula Shema Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So these last 8 psukim, while Moshe Rabbeinu were alive, says the Gaon, he doesn't tell us what, but were configured differently, that it didn't say Vayamas Moshe. It said something else. So the Gemara says, Lema D'Loi Reb Shimon, that which we say that you can't give the last 8 psukim to 2 people, it's not like Reb Shimon, because according to Reb Shimon, it was all written by Moshe Rabbeinu. Says the Gemara, Afilu Tamer Reb Shimon Hoyel Vishtani, since it's different, it's done b'dema. So Ishtani, and therefore you should give it all to one aliyah.
Question?
Yeah.
Why can't we just say Ein Muktam Umuchar? So, even if it didn't happen yet now, but Torah is not a...
Ein Muktam Umuchar is true, but it had to happen. And this didn't happen yet. Now, V'am Rabbi Shuba Abba Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav, Halakech Sefer Torah min hashuk. If you buy a Sefer Torah from the marketplace, okay, you get a mitzvah like buying it from the marketplace. Chaytev mitzvah min hashuk. But that's not the mitzvah of writing your own Sefer Torah. Ksavai, if you write your own Sefer Torah or commission someone else to write it, Ma'ala lavakosiv kilu kibloi me'ar Sinai. The Torah considers it as if you got it from Har Sinai. Amar Rav Sheshes, here's a quick trick. If you buy an old Sefer Torah and you make one correction in it, Amar Rav Sheshes, imigia afilu ois achas, if you correct even one letter, Ma'ala lav kilu kisava. It's as if you wrote it. Many years ago, when my first shver died, I bought a Sefer Torah, an old Sefer Torah, and made corrections in it. So it's like you have your own Sefer Torah. Do we have 41 Zoomers here already? Wow. 41 Zoomers.
Yes.
Wow. We're missing a lot of people. Dahlia's not here. Marshall's not here. We're on Daf Lamed Amid Aleph. How many lines from the bottom, everybody?
How many from the top?
Amar Rabbi Yeshua bar Abba, Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav. Somebody want to give the line count?
Yeah, it's
We're a little past the middle by Tana Rabbanan.
A little past the middle. Amar Rabbi Yeshua bar Abba,
with my GPS.
Amar Rav Gidol Amar Rav. Rabbi Yeshua bar Abba says in the name of Rav Gidol, in the name of Rav. Oh, excuse me, I said that already. Tana Rabbanan. Oisa Adam Yeriya, the Torah is made out of different portions of parchment. And the parchment could have bash shalosh dafim, as little as 3 columns, v'ad bash shmeina dafim. But the one sheet should not have more than 8 columns. Pachas mikan v'yeser al kan, less than 3, more than 8 lo yaseh. Now, if, let's say, you wanted to, you wanted not to make the sheets are expensive. You shouldn't stup in many columns in one sheet. Below yarba bedafim. You shouldn't stip in many columns in one sheet, because that looks like a letter. V'lo yimat bedafim. You shouldn't spread it out too much. In other words, let's say you make a very, very big column, very wide, so that the sheet only has a few columns. You shouldn't do that, because when the Baal Kaireh is going from line to line, it's easy for him to lose the place. How big should a column be? If it should have the word Mishpeisechem Shalosh Pamim, 3 times. Nizdamnu lo Yeriya bas tesha tafim. What happens if he has a sheet that has 9 columns? So you should divide it. But don't divide it 6 and 3. Lo yachloik shalosh lekan v'sheish lekan. Don't divide 3 and 6. El arba lekan v'chamesh lekan. Divide it 4 and 5. Now, b'ameh dvar mamurim b'tchilas ha-sefer, in the beginning of the sefer. Aval b'seif ha-sefer, but at the end of the sefer, afilu pasuk echad v'afilu daf echad. You could have even one pasuk on one daf. Now, says Gemara, pasuk echad salkadaitach, one pasuk on one daf? Says the Gemara, Ela Ema, says the Gemara, how could you have one pasuk doing the whole sheet? That doesn't make sense. Ela Ema pasuk echad b'daf echad. You could have one pasuk in the last column. Now, since the pasuk of La'enei Kol Yisrael only has 12 words, you would write one word, big words, until you got to the bottom. Now, Shir Gilyon, the size of the margins, Milmata tefach, you have to have a margin on the bottom of a tefach. Milmala shloish etzbais, on the top, 3 finger breadths. Ubein daf ledaf, between each column, kimaloi revach shtei etzbais, the width of 2 fingers. Ubechumashim, and in between the chumashim, no. This means the chumashim scrolls, the scrolls of Bereshis. Milmata shalosh etzbais, the margin below is 3 finger breadths. Milmala shtei etzbais, above is 2 finger breadths. Ubein daf ledaf, and in between the 2 columns, kimaloi revach godel, the width of the thumb. Now, bein shita l'shita kimaloi shita. The spacing between one line and another line is that you should have the width, the height of a line should be the spacing between each line. Ubein teva l'teva, and in between each word is kimaloi ois katana, the size of a yud. Ubein ois la'ois, and between each letter, kimaloi chutasara, like a hair's breadth. Al yimayit adam eseksav, a person should not make the script smaller, loy mipnei revach shel mata, in order to have the proper margin on the bottom, v'loy mipnei revach shel mala, v'loy mipnei revach shebein shita l'shita, nor in order to ensure enough room between one line and the other. V'loy mipnei revach shebein parsha l'parsha, there has to be a certain amount between one parsha and the next. Now, let's say you have a word that's 5 letters, right? Let's say you have the word chamisha, that's 4 letters. Let's say you have the word shmeina with a vav, right? So it's 5 letters, and it's at the end of the line. Lo yichtav shtayim b'seich hadaf. Don't write 2 letters inside the column. Ushalosh chutz l'daf, and 3 letters outside of the column. Ella, the majority of the word has to be in the column. Ella shalosh b'seich hadaf, 3 letters inside the column. Ushtayim chutz l'daf, and 2 letters outside of the column. Nizdamnu loy teva b'ashtei oisiyos. If you have a word that's 2 letters, lo yizrikenu l'bein hadafim. Don't write it in the margin between the 2 columns. Ela chayze b'kayse b'tchilas hashita. Start it on the next line. Now, what happens if you make a mistake with Hashem's name? Hatoya b'shem. You make a mistake, and you left out Hashem's name. Of all things, you left out Hashem's name. Goyrer es mashikosav, erased the word, the word after it, and the Tola es mashiger, write Hashem's name there, and then suspend on top of the line the word that you scraped out. The Kaisav es Hashem, you write Hashem's name al makoy magrar, on the place that you scraped. Now Rabbi Yossi says a big chiddush. Rabbi Yossi says, if let's say that you left out Hashem's name and the ink is moist, Rabbi Yossi first Rabbi Yossi says you could even suspend Hashem's name. Rabbi Yossi af toilen es Hashem. Rabbi Yitzchak says if the ink is moist, af moichik, you could blot out the ink, the kaisev, and write on top of the blotted area. Rabbi Shimon Shizuri Aimer, kol Hashem kulai toilen. You could suspend the whole name of Hashem, but miktsasai ein toilen. But part of the name you cannot suspend. Rabbi Shimon Elazar Aimer Mishim Rab Meir, ein kaisvin es Hashem, you can't write Hashem's name, lo al mekam agrar, not in a place where you scraped another word out, v'lo al mekam amachak, and definitely not on blotted ink. And vein toilen I say, nor do you suspend Hashem's name over the line. Ketzad Isa, you have to remove that whole urea. Masalikas urea kula, you have to remove that whole sheet. The gainza, hide it and write it again.
Rabbi Weiss, can I ask one small question?
Itmar. Rav Chananel Lama Rav. Rav Chananel says the name of Rav. Halacha toilin es Hashem. The law is that you can suspend Hashem's name. Rabbi Babachana Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel. Halacha moichek v'kaisev. You could blot it out and write upon it. So the Gemara says, why didn't they say that halacha is like the names? V'leim Amar halacha kamar, the one that said one opinion. Omar halacha kamar, says the Gemara mishum de apchelu, because there are those that switch the names. Amar Ravin bar Chinina, Amar Ula, Amar Reb Chanina, halacha ki Reb Shimon Shizuri. Now let's go back. Reb Shimon Shizuri said that you could suspend the whole name. V'loi oid elakol makom sheshana Rabbi Shimon Shizuri, but elsewhere halacha k'maisa. Now, Reb Chanina made a statement that there is somewhere else where the halacha is like Reb Shimon Shizuri. So ahai, ilay maha Reb Shimon Shizuri Aimer Kol Hashem Kulay Toilen, that you could suspend the whole name Miktsasa Ein Toilen. But the Gemara says Ha'imar Allah Amar Rav Chananel Amar Rav Halacha Toilen Es Hashem, and Rabbi Baba Yitzchak Amar Rav Yitzchak Bar Shmuel Halacha Moichek V'Kaisev V'Im Isa. And if it's true that Reb Chanina held that the halacha is like Reb Shimon Shizuri, then Hunami Lema, he should have said it in this teaching that the halacha is like Reb Shimon Shizuri. Ella, says the Gemara, aha. Rather, it's going on the following. Reb Shimon Shizuri Aimer, Reb Shimon Shizuri Aimer, afilu ben chomei shonim v'chayreish ba'sada, even if the animal is, here we're talking, this is a very interesting case. This is talking about a ben pekua. That's a fetus that was found alive inside a slaughtered animal. So now, the din is that since it was inside the mother, it was permitted with the shechita of the mother. So Reb Shimon ben Shizuri takes this to the to the ultimate. Afilu ben chamei shanim, even if the animal is walking alive, this ben pekua is walking around, the chayrish basada and plowing in the field, shchitas imay metarta, you don't have to shecht it. The shchita of the mother permits it. Says the Gemara, well that can't be, because here, itmar Allah, Zeiri Amar Rab Chanina Halakha Krib Shimish Azuri. Now, v'imisa, and if it's true that then Rabban Bar Chanina should have said this in the name of Ula. V'imisa hu nami lema. It should say that Rabban Bar Chanina should say in the name of Ula that halacha is like Zeiri. So this isn't the case. Elamaha. This is a get shaila. Normally, if a man says kisvu get, you don't deliver it. He has to say kisvu utenu, write it and deliver it. Except in certain radical cases. Elaha, b'rishayna ha'ya'imrim, ha'yaytzei b'koiler, a man that was taken out with an iron collar around his neck to be hung. V'amar kisvu get lishti, write a get to my wife so that she shouldn't fall liyibam. Even though he didn't say tenu, we say it's only because he's famished, because he's taken out to be killed. Hari elu yichtavu v'yitnu. We write it and we deliver it. Chazru leimer, afa meforesh, a person who goes on a boat trip where many people were lost at sea. V'yaytze b'shara, it takes a dangerous caravan trip. Even if he just says kisvu, we deliver it. Reb Shimon Shazuri, Aimer Afa Masukin, also someone who is dying. Inami, aha. Or it's the following Reb Shimon Shazuri. Trumas Meiser Shel Demai. The Truma of Meiser of Demai. Now by Demai, a lot of things, that's what you buy from an Am Aretz. A lot of things that you have to separate, but you don't have to give. For example, you separate the Meiser Ani, but you don't have to give it to the Ani because Hamaytz Mechaber Avarai. You just have to separate. You separate the Meiser, but you don't have to give it to the Levi because Hamaytz Mechaber Avarai. But the Trumas Meiser, which you can't eat, you have to give to the Kohen. What happens if an accident happened and you separated the Trumas Meiser, and then it got mixed up with the rest of the Demai? Now that would cause that the whole thing, if it's not 100 to 1, would have to be sold cheaply to a kohen. We allow the following leniency. Reb Shimon Shazuri Aimer, af bechel, even during the week. Normally we could ask an Hamaretz on Shabbos, because even an Hamaretz wouldn't lie on Shabbos. But here, even during the week, Shayla, you could ask him if he took off the Meiser and rely on it, and not have to sell the whole thing to a kohen. So again, the Gemara says this can't be the Shimon Shazuri, because now, if Rav Chanina did this, then Rabban Bar Chanina should have said in the name of Ula these rulings also. Ela aha. Rabbi Yossi ben Kippur Aimer Mishim Rab Shimon Shazuri. Pula Mitzri, Shezro Lazera, an Egyptian bean that you planted for its seed. Miktsasa Hishrish Lifnei Rosh Hashanah. Some of it took root before Rosh Hashanah. Miktsasa Achar Rosh Hashanah. Now you can't take truma from one from the other because you can't be Torah min HaChodesh ala Yashin or min HaYashin ala Chodesh. Ein Torah mizal zeh, lefi she'ein Torah ma'asim loy min HaChodesh ala Yashin. What do you do? Keitzad yatze, tzoyver garnoy l'seicha. You mix all the seed together. V'nimtza Torah ma'asim min HaChodesh shabay ala Chodesh shabay, or min HaYashin shabay ala Yashin shabay. And we say that when you take the truma, you get an equal distribution of from the old and from the new. And especially this is true where you only need one piece, because chita achas peiteres es akri. Says the Gemara, but again, ha'imra Allah am Reb Shmuel ben Nachmani am Reb Yochanan halakha k'Reb Shimon Shazuri. And if Reb Chanina said it, then it should have mentioned him as well. So again, we're looking for the Ze'iri that the halacha that Rab Chanina said is like Rab Shimon Shazuri. What is this elusive halacha? What was your question, Barry?
That we see very, very baby Sifrei Torah that are kosher, but you don't have those measurements from the top to the bottom in between.
Well, these are minimums.
But they don't have the minimum.
Yes, they do.
Wait, what?
Yes, they do.
Some Rebbe Sefer Torah that he danced with, that was like smaller than anything. I don't believe they had it in between. I don't believe, all right, whatever, I'm wrong. And what does it mean, toilet? What was that word you said, the shame that you could be toilet?
They suspended it above the line between the two words.
I don't get that.
I didn't understand what that means either.
In other words, let's say you have the word, it's supposed to say, Bereshis bara Elokim es, and you left out the word Elokim. So between the word bara and es, on top of it, they wrote the word Elokim.
So I mean it was between lines.
Correct. That's what suspend means.
We have an out in the Sifrei Torah otherwise, when the words are like long and you're coming to the end of a line, they fetch it smaller.
Right, that you could do.